I cannot tell you guys how much it means to me that you're all here tonight. Really nice turnout, and you know, this is an important night because I've got these two very special ladies here with me, and I will never see them again after this week. So
we have a special plan for them after. That comment needs to sound like there's a special plan for us, so we'll get out of here. Okay.
So. Tell my family I love them. So, IGDA Sacramento, we are 3 months in, and here we are already. You know, it's been tremendous turnout with the various classes and events that we've done so far. August is, well, the next 4 months. The rest of this year is going to be pretty amazing stuff what we've got planned ahead. So be ready for that. In any case, tonight, like I said, very special night. Director Kate Edwards, Ops Manager Tristan Hightower. They're going to be talking to you guys about the vision of IGDA, where they, you know, where they've, how they started, you know, what they're doing now, and where they're going from here. And then, you know, any questions you all will have, which I hope you all will have some good questions, because like I said, we may not see them for a while. You can always email, but this is your good opportunity. You know, we'll do Q&A toward, you know, after everything is done with the presentation. And yeah, so without further ado, it's Kate Edwards.
Great, thanks.
All right.
So yeah, I'm not going to drone on forever, so, you know, don't worry. I just wanted to go through some slides, kind of give you a perspective on just kind of the overarching thing about what's the IG, you know, where are we going, kind of some stuff, points about advocacy, since you do happen to exist in a very legislative town, which is, as you all know, especially in this state. And I'm a native Californian, by the way, just so you know. And yeah, just so we can talk about some of these issues. So yeah, so I mean, you've been in existence for about 3 months. I've been in this job for about 7. So we're both young. So young at heart, anyway. So, so yeah, so go, please. Oh, that's why. Yeah. So, you know, I apologize if this is really high level and basic, but as I've talked to different chapters around the world, some people they don't even know exactly what they signed up for when they got, like, yeah, I want to be in the IGDA. Yeah, I want to help with a chapter. It's like, what is the IGDA? What's the Independent Game Developers Association? No. International Game Developers Association, or they'll say it's the IGDA, and we get all kinds of stuff like that. But anyway, International Game Developers Association, most of our membership are professionals. You know, they're kind of spread out between studio-based and independent professionals, and we're kind of making that distinction, and we're considering that, actually making that a membership classification distinction between those based in a studio versus those who are kind of on their own path. And I know that's I've been asking a lot of people in the indie community, how do you define indie? And I know that's controversial and a very long topic we're not going to get into right now. But I'm always interested in the opinions about what that means. We also have a special class for developing countries, so they get an economic break on the membership price, and the unemployed as well. Of course, we have academics, students, and faculty. We have a lot of students in the IGDA. They're starting academic chapters, beginners, you know, basically people right out of college, or whether they're in college or not, they're people who want to get a start in the game industry. And then, of course, studio affiliates and partners, some of whom comprise the group up there, the professionals. So, for example, Microsoft will buy a studio affiliation with the IGDA, which gets them an X number of employee memberships to the IGDA, which then they broadcast internally to their company and say, okay, here you go, this is a benefit that we bought for you as developers, and, you know, feel free to sign up. And so that's kind of the way the studio affiliate thing works. And we have studio affiliates of all sizes. I mean, we've got Microsoft and, you know, Ubisoft and companies like that. But then we also have, you know, very small developers with like less than 10 people. You know, we do have a scale that we've made that basically gives a discount on the membership price depending on the size of your studio. So yeah, so that's kind of the way it works. Partners are usually people who are not necessarily in the game industry themselves, but they have services they would like to provide to game developers. So these could be, you technology companies that like give discounts on their hardware and stuff like that, where they don't specifically build games, but they certainly provide tools or services that can help game development. So that's kind of the cloud of people, is the IGDA. In terms of where is the IGDA, so right now, roughly, it's about 70% is US based, which is not a surprise because the organization started in the United States, so you kind of expect that it's going to be heavier in the United States. Got 13.5 in Canada. You can see the other top three right there. Brazil's kind of surprising to me that we have such a large membership in Brazil, but I think it's also really cool. The top chapters, Montreal is the biggest chapter in the world for the IGDA. Very big group there. Toronto is next, so Canada, I mean, despite the membership being very US-based, Canada has the lead on the chapter size, and you can see the other larger chapters right there. And I actually think the San Francisco chapter is not quite that big anymore. There's kind of been sort of a shuffling of bits. And so yeah, it's not always easy to track because these numbers are all based on actual memberships. But as we all know, even I'm sure in this crowd, there's a few members, but you always have a much larger crowd of people who show up at IGDA events and are involved in the chapter, but they don't have a membership. So, so that's the way it works. So I break it down again like this, is by region, and we're definitely working to improve the non-North American areas. It's a very high priority for me. If you wonder why I went into all the detail on the where, it's because I'm a geographer, that's my background. So kind of goes with the territory. That's basically, just so you know, my background is that I'm a geographer who ended up in the game industry, working at Microsoft for 13 years, where I created what I called the geopolitical strategy team. So my job was helping, and still is, to help companies avoid making political and cultural mistakes that get their games banned and things like that. So that's kind of my thing I do. That's my hobby now. So IGDA is my day job. So yeah, so that's why I get obsessive about the where question. So our mission is pretty straightforward. So we're here to advance the careers and enhance the lives of game developers. And that applies to, I mean, the game developer is a term we use in the very broadest sense. I mean, from my job function, I'm not a typical game developer by any means, but I consider myself a game developer because I'm part of the process. And so whether you're audio or art or writing or producing or whatever you're doing, you're part of the process, legal, marketing, all of that. So we basically use developer in a broad sense. I know some developers who don't like that, being, having the term co-opted so broadly, but it's like we can call them programmers and coders then, so, or whatever they want. But more recently, like in Seattle, because I'm affiliated with the Seattle chapter, I was working as part of that chapter for quite a while. We've been using the term game creators, which, semantics. We basically make games, so that's what we do. And so the IGDA is the only professional association that exists for game developers. So, and we've been around for roughly 25 years, give or take. This organization started as the Computer Game Developers Association, and it was started in this area, in fact. Well, actually, this area, I mean, Central California, or I guess this is Northern California, whatever you want to call it. So the top priorities. So we have some main things that we focus on, and as executive director, these are my priorities for the organization. So advocating on key issues is a very strong point. I don't think the organization has done the best job at this, and we'll get into this more later. Also fostering networking and community, which is really why chapters exist. That's why chapters exist, and that's why the special interest groups exist. So the chapters are basically a cross-section of the membership by locale, and the SIGs are a cross-section of the membership by function. And so by function and or by a special interest. So like we've got the Women in Games SIG, or we've got the LGBT SIG, or we've got the Writing SIG, Localization SIG, Production SIG, coding, all of that kind of stuff. So, and I think those two are very necessary. And some of the larger chapters, they actually have their own SIGs because there are so many people in that locale that they've decided to have their own SIG. So like IGDA Japan has their own localization SIG, for example. just because they have enough people to support that activity, and which I think is great. Because there's no reason why you can't get together, say for example, as writers in a locale and talk about your craft and help each other. Encouraging professional development is another really big thing that we're into. We're trying to partner more with different outlets for like educational benefits, things like that, and just trying to get developers to talk more with one another, which kind of goes back to the community aspect, but community in the sense of mentorship and leadership, and trying to get developers who have experience to help those who don't, and to really kind of share and discuss their craft more and help each other out in that way. And of course, expanding our international reach is a really big priority, like I mentioned before. Because, I mean, a lot of the growth, I mean, if you look at it from a localization perspective, a lot of the growth, or most of the growth in the game industry is outside of North America and outside of Europe. I mean, we're seeing, a lot of people don't know, for example, that one of the fastest growing regions in the world for video games is the Middle East. And you're like, a lot of people are just shocked by that notion, because they're like, well, I thought the Middle East was all restricted and everything. It's like, no, not as much as people imagine. You know, and we even had at the Localization Summit this year, which I used to do at GDC, now I've got other things to do at GDC. But at the Localization Summit, we had a session about Africa, and the African game development is just starting to explode. Now, there's still a lot of infrastructure issues in Africa, and a lot of other, money-related issues, but it's a lot more active than people give it credit for. So, what happened to that slide? Okay, anyway, to talk about advocacy issues, there's a slide missing here. It might show up later. So let's talk about some advocacy issues, because as I mentioned, advocacy is, to me, in my opinion, one of the reasons why this organization exists. We exist for one another to help each other out, but we also exist to be vocal about what our industry is about, vocal to people who don't do what we do. And that includes legislators, it includes people who don't understand our craft, it's those who make quick knee-jerk judgments about what we do or what we don't do. And I know that this is a controversial issue even within developers, because I've heard many things from developers who say, we've got the Supreme Court ruling from last year, we don't need to say a word because we're protected by the SCOTUS and we're golden. It's like, yeah, in the United States, not in the rest of the world. Our craft is still affected negatively in all kinds of ways around the world. So for those of us who have this halo of Supreme Court protection, we can actually do things to help people in other countries, and by understanding what they're doing and the problems they're having and so on. But this is a chart that basically is showing, like, if there was a correlation between violence and video games, this is what we should be seeing in terms of the data showing, and this is different, you can't read it, I apologize, but the Netherlands is over here in the far right. These are different country points in terms of video game spending per capita and gun-related murders. So that's the line we should see if video games really had a causal effect, which is, there's the picture. That's the picture that was actually, I apologize, it somehow got out of order. Anyway, so yeah, sorry. That's the line that we actually see, is that with greater consumption of video games, we're actually seeing a decrease in this. And there's other data that backs this up. Like, this is just for the United States alone. You can see that since, this is tracking video game sales since 1998, over here in the far left over to 2011, and the green line are murders and violence. And you can see the correlation there. Is there a correlation? No, there isn't. But this is not what the public thinks. This is not the rhetoric that keeps being spewed out by legislators and other people who don't take the time to understand what we do and what our craft is about. And so we've got things like the rating system that has been put in place voluntarily by the ESA, which is also an organization that gets vilified a lot from within. I know a lot of developers who hate the ESA, they hate the ESRB, but what they don't understand is that if we don't have a voluntary system like this, we get something like this, which is a bureaucratic nightmare where the government decides what is sensitive and what needs to be regulated. And I don't think any of us want this at all, And so So it's, you know, the ESRB is, I've had to deal with it quite a bit in my culturalization work, you know, trying to decide what ratings, and of course in other countries it gets even dicier because the ESRB is pretty straightforward. It's mostly, you know, sex, violence, and profanity for the most part. In other countries like the Game Rating Board in Korea, they actually focus on